working. Okay. We are 9:10 a.m. on Friday, the 29th of September, 1995. My name is William J. Kelch. I'm interviewing Mr. Peyton Morgan at his home at 531 Knowlton in Knoxville, Tennessee. We're going to talk about some of his experiences as a World War II veteran. So again, Mr. Morgan, thank you so much, Peyton, for having me in your home here and talking about World War II. And again, as I mentioned before we began the tape, we're very unstructured. You pretty much say what you want to say, talk about what you want to talk. I do have a very rough outline of some of the things I'd like to discuss.
Where do you want me to begin?
Well, why don't we start? Seems like a logical place. Like, when did you join? When and how did you join the service? I mean, how did you come to be in the military in the first place?
Probably should start in 1939 when I went to VPI, Virginia Tech.
Blacksburg.
Blacksburg, Virginia. At that time, Tech was a full military school, just like the Citadel or VMI. If you went there, you were in the military. You lived in barracks, stood reveille every morning. You marched to all your meals. You retreat every night. Room inspections during the day. It was full military.
So you were a cadet then?
Oh yes,
basically. Okay.
The freshman year, the Rats lived a mighty, mighty rough life. The freshman.
And that was 1939 for you?
1939 is when I started in the fall of 39. I was 16 years old. About 3,000 students there at that time. And my field of study was electrical engineering, although the first 2 years are much the same. So this was started in 39. I graduated in 1943. Typically, they would have summer camp between the junior and senior years, and then as part of the ROTC program. And then when you graduated, you could be commissioned in the military. This was in the middle of the war. And I was, I guess, 1941 when they bombed Pearl Harbor. Was a dance weekend, and I remember Sunday morning somebody came in and had my date at the student activities building. Somebody came in and said the Japs bombed Pearl Harbor, and I said, "What's Pearl Harbor? I never heard of it." So that was the
I'm sure you weren't alone at the time.
Huh?
I'm sure you weren't alone at the time, not even knowing what Pearl Harbor was.
No earthly idea.
Everybody
what
knows
it was
now, but
well, what they did, the military did, and they eliminated summer camp the summer between my junior and senior years because they made us go to school that summer and accelerated us so that we would graduate earlier and we could get into the Army sooner.
Graduate earlier in 43.
However, I graduated February 43.
Okay, and you would have graduated like
in
May
June.
or June.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was interesting where they had I've never been to a graduation exercise in my life. I missed my high school one because an English teacher got mad with me, gave me an F, and I had to go to summer school to graduate. At Virginia Tech, they canceled them all in 41, 42, 43, so I remember leaving lab and going down and getting my diploma and coming back and finishing my work. So then they tied OCS on in lieu of summer camp.
You had to do OCS?
So
even after all that?
The funny part was we ended up same time. I could have gone to summer camp. Yes, they substituted OCS for summer camp.
It seems strange. I thought that when you graduated from there, weren't you eligible for a commission?
Yes.
Without the OCS?
But they decided to put the OCS in since we didn't get to go to summer camp.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So they really had, since it was 90 days, we had no net gain at all.
Right.
But we could stay in school till we graduated. They deferred us because I was majoring in electrical engineering. with a major in electronics, and they needed electronics people. They wanted me to finish. So what happened when I finished, they gave me a month off, and
I mean, like
made
February to March?
yes,
In that
made
time
me a
period?
corporal. My serial number is 131-22158. You don't forget those sort of things.
Mhm.
And I reported to Fort Meade, Maryland for induction. And the interesting part was a whole group of us from Tech arrived at the same time. And we were thrown in with all the inductees. You know, they'd been having draftees running through Fort Meade. So they gave us all of our shots and gave us our uniforms and told us to get dressed and get out in front of the barracks. And this retired first sergeant came up, used to handling all these draftees, you know. And every one of us in that group had graduated from Tech.
Mm-hmm.
4 years of military. So he didn't know this. So he said, all right, y'all fall in out here. Well, we all just fell in like this. And he looked, and he couldn't quite understand it.
You knew what you were doing, huh?
And he called us to attention, and we all snapped to it, and he looked at us again. I can still see the expression on his face, his mouth like this. So he gave us a right face, and we all popped off and forward march, and off we went. And they decided, after they found out that we knew something about it, they took all of us and put us in a review the next day. And were telling people, said, see how fast we train our draft? But I can still see that guy's expression on his face, where he just.
Well, let me ask you, when you became a cadet then in the fall of '39, did you anticipate the war? At that time, did people say, well, we're going to end up in this war, just sure as the world?
Not
'Cause, you know,
really.
France had just fallen.
Not really.
In the middle of,
Not really. It was something way off. I was 16 years old. I had no idea that I was going to college, do the military, and get into the war.
Okay, so you didn't. What? See, I'll get my history backwards. France had not just fallen. Let's see what Hitler had just attacked Poland September 1st, right? Is that, am I
that
right?
was 39.
39, yeah. And France would be the next summer, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
And
okay.
then they started the Blitz. And of
Right.
course, along about then it began to dawn on us that something
You
big
were maybe going to end up in the military.
was
I mean,
going on, you
Okay.
see. And people were being drafted right and left. And of course, we were automatically deferred being in a military
Okay.
college.
well, what motivated you to go to Virginia Tech then? I mean, education.
My dad was
did
an
you want
electrical contractor.
Yes.
He was not a college graduate.
Uh-huh.
And he had, all of his life, I remember hearing him say, I want you to go to Blacksburg and be an electrical engineer. So when the time came, that was where I went.
Just sort of automatic. Huh?
Sort of automatic.
Had you at that time? Were you contemplating a military career?
No.
Were you?
No.
Were you as a Virginia Tech graduate? Were you obligated to the military? Did you have to go into the
Oh,
military?
yes, because they had deferred me.
Well, no. I mean, aside from the war.
Oh, no.
Had the war not come, you
It
would
was
not,
optional.
It
Strictly
was
optional.
optional
Just
to go.
like it is now. My youngest son graduated from the Citadel.
Right.
And
Oh, is that right? Oh.
Yes, he elected to go into the Navy. He wants a Navy career. We're going to see him next week. He is a full lieutenant now on a guided missile cruiser in Mayport, Florida.
Okay. So like VMI and Citadel, even today, their graduates going in the military is optional.
Yes,
It's not
uh-huh.
mandatory. Okay.
It was optional.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, and along about...
We're going to stop this just for one moment while we answer the phone here. Okay, we're back in business here again.
so along about time I was a junior, we pretty well knew we were all going to end up in the military. That the United States was going to be in that war sooner or later.
Okay. I presume that the students at Virginia Tech were all Virginians, or most all Virginians?
My roommate was
not so.
From Johnstown, Pennsylvania.
Okay, so Virginia Tech was it was pretty cosmopolitan place.
Pretty much so. They were predominantly Virginians, but we had people from all over. A lot of West Virginians, a lot of people from up Maryland, Pennsylvania, some New Yorkers. We had a young fellow named Al Silverstein from New York City. I remember him. Mm-hmm. We called him Mop. He disappeared after about a year or two. I guess he changed schools or flunked out. I can't remember which. I
should mention here, just for the tape, that Peyton was born in Lynchburg, Virginia, so he's a Virginian himself. Did you, when you first went to Virginia Tech, and then subsequently when you became part of the Army itself, did you have any experiences with people from other parts of the country that were particularly memorable? You know, I mean, you're from Virginia and you met some guy from Oregon, and boy, was he strange because he did things some other way, or, you know, in other words, was there a bit of culture shock in going to college and or going off to the Army at Fort Meade?
Not really.
No?
Not really. We had some, my roommate was from Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and I looked him up several years ago, after 50 years, first time I had seen him. We had one fella in electrical engineering, a cadet, that his eyes were so bad, he was named Hurley. He couldn't read anything unless he got very close to it. So they said, he's not qualified for OCS, so we'll just give him a commission.
that makes, there's a certain, the right way, the wrong way, and the Army way. Right?
Yes. But there was certain things that worked out in my case that were almost unbelievable, because I majored in electrical engineering. My specialty, or I guess major within the field, was electronics. And I ended up in radar. When I was Corps of Engineers, ROTC at Virginia Tech, the minute I graduated, I was sent to Fort Meade and then to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, to become a Signal Corps officer. And again, a group of us went up there.
That radar was signal? Is that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. That makes sense to you?
Well, I didn't know at that time that I was going into radar, but to go to the Signal Corps was logical from the electrical engineering, electronics background.
You were anticipating the Corps of Engineers, though.
Yes.
But you ended up in Signal.
That's right.
Did it make sense to you, or did that annoy you?
Yes, that made very much sense. It didn't bother me at all.
Oh, okay.
So I went to Fort Monmouth. We went in the OCS class. Since we had been in a military school, we had studied we had military classes twice a week. And so OCS was just like 3 months more of school, except almost a vacation as far as having to do any particular mental arithmetic. In other words, the military was a little less strict than we had. In other words, fixing the beds, keeping the foot lockers. The only thing I didn't like was 4:30 in the morning, but
they got up a little earlier, did they, in the real Army? Huh?
But I got up 5 o'clock this morning, and I swore when I got in the military I was never going to get up before daylight again. but I did.
You do, huh?
We had military training, of course, at OCS. Did you go through OCS?
No, sir.
You didn't? But we had classes and studies. We studied military, we studied organization, we had to study basic electricity and classes such as this. And we had a captain teaching us basic electricity.
Which you knew
I
more
equals
about the
E
captain.
over R, and of the class of 15, 9 of us had degrees in electrical engineering. And the poor captain would get up there and he'd go along saying something, and 9 hands would go up. And he'd look at it and he'd say, all right, what did I say wrong that time?
Yeah.
So the class structure was easy. The military part wasn't difficult.
Okay.
So OCS was really no problem for any of us.
The military is a little less military than Virginia Tech.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
I got a picture of our OCS graduating class. And one of them in there is, let me see, what went on to be a movie star, Forrest Tucker.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
He was in your OCS class?
Yeah.
That's an interesting
Signal Corps.
anecdote. Forrest Tucker's in your OCS class.
And there was another Lieutenant Pippy who was an actor, but I never heard any more about him. But Forrest Tucker was a real stickler for military, which is probably why he did so well in F Troop.
Yeah, I was going to say, he did F Troop, didn't he? Which was...
Yes. And, he had to know the strict part of military in order to play that part so well.
Huh. That's interesting. Did you, when you went off, either when you went off to Virginia Tech or when you went off to Fort Meade, did you have any particular family traumas associated with that? It was hard to leave, or somebody was sick and you didn't want to leave, or or it was didn't want to leave. It was difficult to leave.
I was ready to move out.
You were ready to go out to the real world, not the big bad world.
Sort of. I was awfully young.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You're 16 when you went to Virginia Tech, and like 20 when you went to Fort Meade. Is that right? Okay.
And then I got my commission, and I still wasn't old enough to buy a drink.
That'd be a little frustrating, wouldn't it?
Well, I didn't drink.
You're second lieutenant. In the Army Signal Corps, and this you got your commission June?
Yeah. Long about June.
June of '43 at Fort Meade.
No. Fort Monmouth.
Okay. When did you remember?
Meade was only a 7-day affair, 6 or 7 days.
Oh, and then you went.
That was the induction center, and then I was sent straight to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey.
Okay, and you were commissioned there about June, and then how long did you remain at Fort Monmouth?
About 2 days. About a day, right out.
Oh, after graduation.
Yeah.
And during your training was focused right on radar?
No radar.
Oh, no radar.
I was focused on becoming a Signal Corps officer.
It was a basic Signal Corps officer study.
We had people we had one fellow that had been at Guadalcanal. We had people from other places, a Canadian in there that had joined the American Army that was going to OCS. These were people brought up from the ranks. So this is why the academic part of it was on a broad level. It wasn't aimed at all toward engineering or radar or anything like that.
General signal.
As a matter of fact, one interesting thing when you get your commission at that time, the first person that saluted you, first enlisted man that saluted you, you gave him $1.
Yes.
That was pretty good sized money. Well, I got out of there on the train, went to Washington without ever anybody saluting me. So I visited my sister in Washington. She was working there before I went on to Virginia. And she and I went out about dark to take a walk.
Excuse me, but this is after Fort Monmouth?
After I got my commission.
At Fort Monmouth.
But no one had saluted me.
Okay, but you had left
my
Fort
bars
Monmouth.
On.
How long were you
got on a train and went straight to Washington.
All right. You were going on leave.
Yes.
They gave you how much leave they gave you?
No. Don't remember. A couple of weeks.
Okay.
So she and I went walking.
Yes.
And she'll remember this. I'll have to ask her if she does. And it was dusk, and we were walking along, and here came this PFC with his girl. And they walked by, and he snapped the salute, and I returned it. Then I stopped, and I said, "Private?" And he turned around, "Yes, sir." I said, "Where'd you learn how to salute?" And he stuttered a little bit and gave me some answer. And I reached in and pulled out my wallet. I don't know what he thought I was going to do there in front of his girl and whatnot. And I pulled out $1 and handed it to him. And he looked at the dollar, and he looked at me, and I explained what it was, you see. And he said, "Oh, thank you. And he stepped back, and he gave me the snappiest salute you ever saw. I returned it. He went his way, I went my way. It was, I don't know where he is.
We're going to stop the tape. One more second for a phone call here. Excuse me. Excuse us. Okay, we're back again.
Okay, my orders sent me from there to General Electric Company in Schenectady. There to begin my training in radar. I didn't know what a radar set looked like. They had radar sets of several different kinds. They had classes that were taught by professors from MIT who developed, actually Dr. Anderson was one of them that was instrumental in developing the one I ended up working with, but we had the SCR 268, which was one of the first ones, and I think that was the one they had in Hawaii that picked up the Japanese coming in, and they thought they were B-17s. This thing had big antennas that looked like mattresses with dipoles out in the front of it and a little oscilloscope inside, and we could see the pulse going, and then we'd see the answer. They taught us all about the circuitry, all vacuum tubes. Transistors weren't invented then.
That's right, yeah, I knew that.
Then they showed us, we learned about the Mickey Mouse that had 2 antennas. It was never put into production.
Why'd they call him Mickey Mouse?
It had 2 antennas that were side by side and looked like Mickey Mouse ears.
Mickey Mouse ears, okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And so you got there to Schenectady like, what, June or July?
Yes, long about, let's say July.
July 43? Okay.
And I stayed there, and we studied very intently. And we had one fellow there named Willie March. He was from Pennsylvania. And Willie remembered anything. I said, "How do you do it?" He said, it's just like you have everything in filing cabinets, and if somebody asks you something, you pick the right aisle, go down, open up the drawer, and look at the file and see what it says. In other words, he could go back to a text he had in college, a book on hydraulics, and tell me what was on page 13 of that book.
Pretty remarkable fellow.
Well, let me tell you the more remarkable part. He said, while we were there, we saw our first TV. General Electric had their first broadcasting station there. We went over to the studio one night and saw TV. Willie came back and he said, "I know how to do 3-dimensional television." I said, "How, Willie?" And he said, "You just wait till after the war." He said, "I know how to do it." And he said, "It'll work and work well." He was the only one of our group that was killed in Europe.
Oh, wow.
That's something. I've often wondered what he had
TV
in
may
mind.
have died there in Europe.
He said he knew how to do it. And I don't question him a bit. The only thing he couldn't do was pronounce film. He called it film.
Film, yeah. Yeah, I know. Where he's from Pennsylvania?
Yes, he was from Pennsylvania.
My kin are from Pennsylvania. They used to say film.
Yep.
My grandma.
We just rib him about it. We'd play bridge.
Drive me crazy. Yeah.
We'd play bridge at lunchtime. But let me see, I stayed over in Scotia, lived with Mrs. Lynch. People would open their homes to people like this. I got a per diem allowance, and so we lived in a home since there was no post up there. rented space from her, and we had one fella in there that was technical writer. He had to be a writer, and he had to know technical things, and they're just mutually exclusive. It's just like engineers being salesmen, which I do. Either you are the salesman type or you're the engineering type. It's hard to be
both.
Both. They're mutually exclusive to a certain extent. But the day of the first snow, December 15th.
43.
43.
You're still in Schenectady.
Still in Schenectady.
Okay.
I got orders to go to Florida.
Okay.
First snow.
Well, that was a lot of training you did there in Schenectady.
Oh, yes.
What did you think of that training in general? Was it realistic? Was it useful? Were the people doing it?
We had, let me tell you.
Doing it well?
Let me tell you a little bit about it, just to give you an example. Dr. Anderson was going to teach us all of the circuitry of a radar set. We studied the airborne radars. We studied every kind. We walked into class. He rolled up the curtain, and there on the blackboard was a complete circuit diagram, all the resistors, the capacitors, the various and sundry vacuum tubes and the arrangements and everything across there. And we all stared at it for a little while trying to figure out what it was supposed to do. Willie March, Dr. Anderson said, all right, let me explain how this particular unit generates its signal and modulates it and does all this thing and so forth. And we'd been looking at it for about 10 minutes. And Willie March held up his hand and said, Dr. Anderson? And Dr. Anderson said, yeah. Willie says, there's a mistake.
This is the same guy that was
Same
later
guy.
killed who said he...
Same fellow.
Okay.
He said, there's a mistake in that. And Dr. Anderson said, what do you mean? And Willie says, come over down to this place back over here in this part of the circuitry. It shows a resistor or capacitor of a certain value, and if you do that, it won't work. It's the wrong thing. And Dr. Anderson finally found it, went back and got his diagram back and said, yeah, you're right. And he had written down the wrong value. He was that sharp.
I was going to say, Willie must have been genius.
And we studied that thing for a week, and I still had a half idea of how it worked. But we studied all kinds of known radar sets. Some were low frequency, some high frequency, and so forth. Then I got orders to go to Camp Murphy, Florida.
Okay. Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead, interrupt us.
But would you call training good?
Good. Oh, yeah.
It was good training. Okay.
Good.
Okay, now we're going to Camp Murphy.
And the strange part
yes, sir.
is we were all electrical engineers, and we'd all majored in electronics, and the military was sending us to school based exactly on what our training had been.
Okay, so it wasn't the classical situation everybody talks about where the Army makes a truck driver out of an electrician or something.
So December the 5th, I got 4th or 5th, first snow. I had a Buick convertible that used to belong to the family up there. I was the only one with a car, I think.
What family?
My family.
The family you lived with in Scotia, New York?
No, my family in Lynchburg.
Oh, okay.
I had their automobile. They had another automobile and let me have the Buick convertible. It was 1935 tan Buick convertible.
And you had that up in Schenectady?
Yes.
Okay.
That's straight 8 engine in it. And I was very popular because didn't many people have cars. I got orders to go to Florida. And Camp Murphy, Florida, was 20 miles from West Palm Beach, right at Jupiter Island. It was just north. Jupiter Island's a well-known resort area.
Yes.
I reported to Camp Murphy to study a specific radar set. I'd had this general training. They wanted me to go there and learn about a particular radar set so that I could fit in with the plans they had for the rest of my military time.
Yes, sir.
What I studied there was the SCR 584,
What's SCR stand for? Just for
Signal Corps Radio.
Oh, so that's pretty logical.
Right.
Okay, SCR 584.
Right.
Okay.
It was developed at
Which
MIT,
is-
and I saw it programmed a while back, and I
Oh,
didn't
is that
catch
right?
all of it. Just
Oh.
happened to see half of it. And there's that old radar set there.
Hmm.
It was a 10 centimeter automatic tracking gun laying radar set, and I'll explain what some of this means. 10 centimeter meant that the frequency used was about 2,800 megacycles. That's 2,800 million cycles. We used a magnetron to develop the frequency, the transmitting frequency, and it's essentially the same magnetron that is microwave. Almost exactly, because that particular frequency heats water. And what happens when you put an electrical signal in there into water, the molecules respond. Either if it's too high, they sit still. If it's low enough, they'll move. There's one particular frequency they resist, and it heats them. And that's 24 to 2,800 million cycles per second. So it had an antenna that looks exactly like these satellite dishes that you see around the country. It was in a trailer that looked like a small tractor trailer, and when we'd get on job site, the antenna would go up through an elevator and stand on top of it.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
The whole equipment was located in what was a small tractor trailer for a tractor trailer. Okay? And for the antenna was stowed down inside for traveling. And when we'd get to the site, we'd park and level the trailer, and the antenna would be run up, and it could search.
Well, you're searching for what?
All right, let me explain a little bit further.
Okay.
This radar was developed specifically for anti-aircraft,
Okay.
for 90 millimeter anti-aircraft, as a matter of fact. That was
Oh,
our
that's right. You mentioned that.
That was our gun. The Germans had the 88, which was supposed to be a super, just about the same size, about 3 inches.
Right.
And what this radar set would do is we could pick up an airplane, put it on automatic track, and it would follow that airplane wherever it went.
And the gun barrel would follow
The gun barrel, it would run it through signal through a computer, and the gun barrel would lead the airplane the right amount.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because if the plane is flying and you shoot at it,
Right.
when the shell gets there, the plane's gone.
Right. You got to lead it. And is this a real computer? I mean, that you
Yes,
would,
yes.
okay.
Now, let me explain a little more about that. That wasn't part of what we used. The computer was another whole field. We had nothing to do with it. It was called the M9 computer, and it was what's called an analog computer. It used resistors and whatnot to get its signals from. It was not.
Wasn't a digital computer.
No,
Didn't have zeros and ones and a.
No, we didn't have transistors.
Well, yeah, the first computers weren't they? They were strictly a magnetic. A wire.
No,
run
that was
through it.
later. The first computers were vacuum tubes. So
Right,
this had a
okay,
bunch of
okay.
vacuum tubes and resistors
Okay.
in it. We didn't study
But it
that.
was an analog computer.
Called an M9 analog computer.
Okay.
It was about as big as that sofa.
Okay.
All right.
But that was in your rig. That was in your van.
No,
Oh, no,
we
it
didn't
wasn't.
even have them down there.
Oh, how did you?
We
Interface
were
with
the
it.
radar people.
Right.
You see.
Right.
Now, I learned all about the radar set. The anti-aircraft people. Here was the purpose of all of this.
Yes.
An anti-aircraft battery had 4 90-millimeter guns.
Right.
1 radar set, 1 computer.
Right.
They had what's called a radar office that could keep the radar set running.
That was you.
No.
No.
I was to be a signal corps specialist
Okay.
with 3 men and all the equipment to do what he couldn't do.
What the radar officer couldn't do?
That's right. He did what's called first echelon maintenance. I was to be able to do the second and third echelon.
Oh, okay. Well, who did you work for?
All right, let me explain. We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
Am I getting too windy?
No. I'm just curious.
I was sent to Florida to learn all about that radar.
Right.
And there were some interesting experiences down there because my wife's gone. Involving, I met a SPA. They were stationed in Palm Beach. And she outranked me. I was second lieutenant. She was a lieutenant JG.
Okay.
But we would go to Palm Beach and West Palm Beach and everywhere there were military and people in uniforms. And you'd go into a bar and there'd be Canadians and Europeans, there'd be Marines, there'd be Air Corps people, everything. People now don't realize how everyone was in uniform.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely everyone. Anyway, my purpose there was to learn all about this radar set. Completely. So, when I finished up at Camp Murphy, I had a pretty good idea it worked. So I was sent to Camp Davis, North Carolina.
Okay, this is when you went to Camp Murray in December.
Camp Murphy
Murphy
in December.
You spent Christmas there, huh?
I stayed there till June.
Till June of '44.
Mm-hmm.
And then you went to North Carolina, where?
Right, Camp Davis.
Which is where?
Near Wilmington.
Okay.
And there I formed the 235th Signal Radar Maintenance Unit.
Okay.
I was a commanding officer.
Are you now
No, still second
first
lieutenant,
no?
still, and
Still a second lieutenant.
I had 1 sergeant, 1 corporal, and 1 PFC. And supposedly they were technically trained. They didn't go to Camp Murphy. I don't remember where they got that training. But they were supposed to know something about electronics and radio and whatnot.
Did they?
Some.
Some.
So I formed the 235th Signal Radar Maintenance Unit over in Camp Davis, and we were an independent Signal Corps unit. And I was listed as a commanding officer, just like commanding officer of any other big
Right.
units, but only 4 of us. We got it all together. We were given our equipment, our shop truck, and a 3/4-ton weapons carrier. You know what they are? You familiar with them? The next thing above a Jeep.
Okay.
We did a little training together to learn what we had and where it was. The shop truck, we had a generator with it and everything. Then we were sent to Camp Stewart, Georgia.
Which is
Fort Stewart now.
Yeah, which is
It's Savannah.
I was going to say Savannah. Yeah. Okay. And this is still June or July? I mean, this is
About July.
maybe you were a month there.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Are they some of these dates? Yeah, about July, latter part of July.
July 44.
I wasn't in Camp Davis very long.
Okay.
Just got the unit together, went to Stewart,
Okay.
and there we did some training with anti-aircraft people. A little bit. But we'd go out and they'd set up the radar set and we'd tune it all up and they'd track things. We could almost track a buzzer. But it's weird to watch that antenna just follow planes around. We finished up our training there. Gosh, that Georgia mud. That was something.
That made an impression, did it?
Yeah. when I went into Savannah, an interesting thing happened. I was, you interested in personal things?
Well, yeah, I was just going to ask, when we talk about these things, you mentioned, like, how did this travel affect you? You went from Virginia to Maryland to Florida to North Carolina. What kind of...
I was dating a girl in college, and we didn't get married when I graduated from OCS. I really don't know why, but I guess things weren't right. But she had a friend that I knew was from Savannah, who went to Randolph-Macon Women's College, and she was cover girl of Life one time. So I asked my girl, I said, I'm going to Savannah. Who is your friend? She says, you don't think I'd really tell you, do you? And I said, well, I guess not. So I went to Savannah. I arrived and went to the DeSoto Hotel. There were no rooms available, but there were a bunch of people there who would take officers or enlisted men that couldn't get hotel rooms and put them in their homes.
There wasn't any place at Fort Stewart for you?
I hadn't even checked in at the camp.
Oh, okay.
I just was there. I had about 2 days of this, you see, one night. Anyway, this family listed as Helmkin said they could take somebody. So they called them, they came and got me and took me home. And I spent the night with them. The next morning, I noticed one of the sons had gone to, I think it's Clemson or the Citadel or something like that. And I was walking out with the man, Mr. Helmkin, the next morning to get my car to leave. And he looked at my license plate and he says, oh, you're from Virginia. And I said, yes. And he said, where? And I said,
hey.
He said, where in Virginia? And I said, Lynchburg. And he said, we have some friends in Danville, which is where my girl was from. And he said, my daughter is at Randolph-Macon Women's College up there. And I said, how interesting. Who are your friends in Danville? And he named my girlfriend.
Small world, huh?
Small world.
Use the cliche.
Really, was his daughter.
Who was the cover girl for Life.
That's right.
Huh.
Isn't that a small world?
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah.
Anyway.
They went to Fort Stewart.
All right. We finished up
unit.
in Camp Stewart at the time.
Camp Stewart, excuse me, yes. Yeah.
It's now Fort, I think.
Yeah, no, it is Fort Stewart now, Camp Stewart.
I got orders to gather up my equipment, my men, and go to Dix, which is a port of embarkation. We went up there to put us on a ship.
This is now in July, August?
I guess it would be August.
August 44?
Yeah.
Okay.
Put us on a ship called the Thomas H. Barry, which was the sister ship to the Mara Castle. Remember the Mara Castle that burned off the coast of North Carolina, I believe, or New Jersey. 7 days we were in Southampton, England.
Does it still be August? August 44?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Pushing into September.
Late part of August, okay.
September. So I guess it was closer to September. It was beginning to get to be fall.
Okay.
Like I said, couldn't keep a diary.
Right.
We got off at Southampton with all of our equipment, gathered all of our... No, we didn't. We didn't get off with our equipment. We got off and went to Blackshaw Moor, which is up near Manchester, England. And they kept my equipment in Southampton. We went to Blackshaw Moor in England and stayed there for about a month doing nothing. Nothing. Hard to do, too. But walked around, got to know the country. I used to go up to Manchester, whatnot.
Were you pretty much free to come and go, or were you expected to be?
No, I don't remember much of that except that there wasn't much to do.
Did you have to like check in once a day or every other day, or?
I don't think I was beholden to anyone.
And that was true of your men as well?
Yeah. We,
I mean, did you know you were going to have about a month to do nothing?
No. I don't know what we were waiting for, if you want the truth of the matter, because the invasion was already underway.
Right.
This English gal in Manchester, to show you the attitudes of the English, said, when Patton was going across Europe, the headlines of paper, and she said, you know, you Americans are really being a great help to us. In fact, got orders to go join the Third Army.
Okay, I'm sorry. You were saying something about the sun?
I just noticed that we were so far north
that
the sun would just rise over the horizon. It would rise at 10 o'clock in the morning, it seemed, and set at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
So you were way north.
Way north. Okay. And it's rainy, beautiful countryside.
This is still England?
Still England.
It's not Scotland?
No,
England.
no.
Okay.
Up near Manchester. Blackshore Moor, near Leek. And I recently ran into somebody from that area. They knew exactly where it was.
Mm-hmm.
Left there, went to Southampton, put us on a Liberty ship to go to the continent.
Excuse me. Let me ask a question here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, ask away.
If you went from Southampton to this, I forget.
Blackshore Moor, yeah.
But you didn't do anything there.
Didn't do anything.
Why did they send you out? Did they just to get?
I don't know.
Did they just send soldiers out into the country just?
It was a military base. It was a military base.
Oh, was it a military base?
Yeah, the English military base.
They just had to put people somewhere, I suppose.
Put them somewhere.
Everybody couldn't sit on each other's
Everybody
shoulders.
couldn't go to Europe at once.
Yeah, everybody couldn't sit at Southampton.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
They knew where I was, and they knew what they had in mind for me.
Okay.
See?
But you were just waiting for it to happen.
I was waiting for it to happen.
So you went back to Southampton then?
Went back to Southampton, and this was in November.
Okay.
So I guess I did go to Europe in about October. I mean, I did go. I left Stewart to Dix to get on the boat to go over. Right. It must have been closer to October.
Okay. So you went on a Liberty ship.
Went on
from Southampton in November.
Took us 12 days to cross the channel.
Days across the English Channel.
Yes.
That's a mighty slow Liberty ship.
Well, they must have gone up in the North Sea and everywhere. It was cold. We had to sleep on deck because they were afraid it would be torpedoed. I ended up sleeping in a coal bucket on all the big lumps of coal, and rats would run over my feet all night long. And ice was forming on everything. It was early winter. So I made friends with the engineer that ran the engine room, and he let me sleep
near the engine.
Near the engine where it wasn't warm. No.
Well, this must have been. I mean, I'm guessing, but I presume that life was reasonably comfortable at Mars when you were in England.
Yes. Yes.
But it was not comfortable at all.
And with 12 days to cross the channel, I just never understood where we went. But it was cold.
And while you were going, you had no idea where you were?
No, they wouldn't tell us.
Were you out of sight of land all the time?
Yes, most of the time. We must have gone up into the Baltic Sea. We ended up at Le Havre.
Right.
And got off there. And lo and behold, our equipment was unloaded too. Our trucks and our weapons carrier and everything.
You and your own equipment matched up.
Matched up right there at Le Havre.
What does that tell you about the military?
The military gets a pretty bad rap because it's like a lot of things. People don't see all the things they do right. All they do is see that occasional screw up.
Yeah. That's been my.
And I remember
experience
seeing
with
that,
the
watching
military,
stuff unloaded, and I saw them, the dock workers drop a great big wrecker that was big enough to pick up tanks and stuff, and I remember seeing they dropped it about 10 feet, and I remember seeing the wheels just go out and the rear end just split open on that thing, and they just pushed to the side. But it wasn't my truck. I saw mine getting unloaded. So we got into our...
When you think about it, that's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
From a logistics standpoint.
Uh-huh.
They matched that stuff up.
Yes, it's amazing. I had orders to join the Third Army. Now, it took me about 2 weeks. I'm trying to put some of this time together because I remember some of the time very well. We got in our trucks and got everything together and started out for Bastogne.
Right.
We went to all sorts of little French towns. I detoured through Reims, I guess it is, where they have the cathedral. I figured I wanted to see it as long as I was going this way, which I did. There was ice all over everything, tanks all over the place. Tanks don't do well on icy roads. They just have no traction whatsoever.
Those tracks don't.
And we got mixed up with the 4th or 6th Armored moving a bunch of stuff, and it's a wonder we ever got to where we were going.
During this trip, did you have much to do with any Allied forces, Brits or French, or no? You were still pretty much a.
I was a complete unit. I didn't belong to anybody.
You were not a.
I was a Signal Corps radar maintenance unit. I was a commanding officer. I had orders to go to Bastogne to join the 38th Anti-Aircraft Group.
And how you got there and how long it took, that was pretty much up to you.
That was me. I had orders to go.
Did you, you said it took you like 2 weeks?
Yes, and the reason there's something wrong with my time here. You know, I'm pulling time out of the air. I know that I arrived in Bastogne January somewhere between the 8th and 12th.
Okay, this is after they'd been relieved from the Bulge. Huh?
That's why I know when I got there. It was just over.
Okay. During that 2 week period, or approximately 2 weeks, you're pretty much on your own.
Yeah.
You didn't report to somebody? Did you have radio? You were in radio contact?
No radio contact, no nothing. I had my unit.
They just gave you orders in Le Havre and said, go to Bastogne and get there as soon as possible?
Yes.
Is that basically it?
No, they just said go to Bastogne.
Did they give you a date they wanted you there? Be there
I
not later than?
I don't remember. Probably did.
That's a very interesting experience. I mean, you and
3 men.
3 other men on your own in Europe, headed from...
And we had an advantage over some of the others. We had the shop truck for working, fixing radar sets, doing radio work, and we had test equipment and everything. We had a generator, we towed behind us, and blackout curtains, and electric heaters. And when we wanted to spend the night, we just turned on the generator, pulled down all the blackout curtains, and we sat in there in 70-degree place when everybody else was in foxholes and tents. And
this is late December, early January.
Right. Mostly my trek across France was in December.
Okay.
And Bastogne, January the 8th, 9th, or 10th. There was stuff all over the C-47s on the ground, half tracks that were half burned up, blasted out tanks, a radar set that was shot up. They had, they told me later they took their 90-millimeter guns and anti-aircraft guns and pointed them down the roads instead of pointing them up at airplanes.
You'd be a pretty high priority target.
place was better. No, I wouldn't, because they wouldn't know what I was there for.
Oh, until you put that thing up, you looked just like any other truck?
Yeah.
Were you?
I didn't have a radar set. I had a shop truck. The radar sets belonged to the anti-aircraft people.
Oh, okay.
See?
Okay.
I am a maintenance crew.
Okay. Were you attacked in any way, like Luftwaffe? Did you see Luftwaffe coming after you during this trek?
Not during that trek.
No.
We heard buzz bombs occasionally.
Buzz bombs.
Buzz bombs.
What's that?
You remember they sent them over to...
V2s?
No, V1s.
V1s?
They're the ones that went pop, 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 pop like
Okay,
this.
you heard those?
Yeah. I heard some in Europe. I heard some in England, I'm sorry.
Oh, in
I
England?
don't remember hearing any in Europe. I'm trying to think. I don't believe I did. We weren't close enough to the fighting to see anything going on.
Okay, what did you do for logistics? Where'd you get food and...
I'm just trying to remember
POL and...
where we
so
got
forth.
our food, where we stayed.
They give you some money to buy food for your troops? Or?
No, we could... I'm trying to think of whether we're bound to have stopped different places. I can't remember any of that.
Were you in the...
really
even though
can't.
you were a small unit operating independently, were you in the midst of a lot of other military vehicles going this way?
Oh yeah, there was all kinds of stuff.
Okay,
going on.
so you weren't exactly
I could have
isolated.
stopped with any company or anybody else, and we could have moved into the mess hall and
Right, okay, that's what it
done
is.
that.
Okay, and you probably could have gotten fuel, for example?
Oh yeah, I had to get fuel
From other
at some
US
quartermaster
military.
place. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
There were places, trucks and troops and vehicles all over the place.
Any particularly noteworthy things happen with relationship to the French? Your relationship with the local community as opposed to the
thing. That is why
military people?
I don't really remember much of going across the Bastogne.
Okay.
After we got to Bastogne and were joined the 38th Anti-Aircraft Group, they assigned us to a battalion which has assigned us to an anti-aircraft company which had 4 90-millimeter anti-aircraft guns and 1 radar set.
Mm-hmm.
They said, go stay with them. Whether they needed me or not, I had to stay somewhere. We would occasionally get a call from the group saying, company so-and-so over in a certain place has got a radar set down and they can't fix it. Then we'd go over there and fix it. That's what we did. I remember going down to 3rd Army headquarters in Luxembourg one time. And it was, there was a harvest moon. It was, you could snow on the ground, you could go out at night and read a newspaper in that January. I was sent down had to go down to Luxembourg. It was about 30 miles. I went in an open weapons carrier. No side on the thing. Windshield, 2 places, a little bit bigger than a Jeep. And I don't think I've ever been so cold in my life. It makes me cold to think about it. We stopped and went into a place where they had a pot-bellied stove that was glowing red. And I nearly burned myself on it trying to get warm. But walking around 3rd Army headquarters, everybody stayed clear of Patton. Nobody liked Patton.
When you say nobody liked him,
Nobody that I knew.
nobody you knew.
Yes.
This would be
He was
mostly.
arrogant.
Were you still? Excuse me. You're probably a first lieutenant by now.
No, I hadn't gotten a promotion
You're
yet.
still a second lieutenant.
Yeah, still a second lieutenant.
Okay, so when you say people you knew, nobody liked him, you mean like the company grade officers and
Nobody you talked to like.
senior NCOs?
I talked to. We stayed in that area for a month or 2 until they made the final push in March. They were sort of static after Bastogne, and then they moved off. about the 1st of March, I guess. And I remember stopping or talking to a tank commander.
This is where now?
This is later, but I'll just give you a comment on Patton.
Okay.
That I said, where you going? And he said, Czechoslovakia. And I said, suppose you can't get there. He said, we're not going back and tell Patton we can. That we don't want anything to do with him. We want to get out of here.
Who are you talking to? Sorry.
Tank commander.
Okay.
He was an officer, captain, I think. He was in a tank. They were stopped, and I just asked them. We stayed. I moved up and down the Luxembourg, Bastogne, not quite down to Nancy line, working on different pieces of equipment.
Let me back to Patton.
Yeah.
Okay. He's a Chicolkian.
Everybody used to say, yeah, somebody else's blood. Somebody else's blood.
Right, yeah, they didn't. Yeah, old blood and guts, somebody else's blood, somebody else's guts. Yeah. What? They didn't like him. Did they at least respect him? Did they feel that they? That their success, let's say, in going through France, and the success they had in relieving Bastogne and so forth, did they grudgingly respect his ability to do that?
That was the very word I was going to use, very grudgingly. He would get, I was down 3rd Army headquarters, and I know a Colonel Bill Sladen here in town. I have lunch with him every Wednesday that we can, who was on Patton's staff.
Mm-hmm.
He was Lieutenant Colonel. And I said, Bill, when I'd go down there, I stayed clear of Patton. He said, probably it's a smart thing to do. And I talked to some people at 3rd Army headquarters, and I said, will I be apt to see Patton? And they said, well, if you see somebody with 2 pearl-handled guns on strutting up and down the hall like a peacock, that's Patton.
Now, he always claimed they weren't pearl, theirs were ivory, and only
well,
he's saying only somebody in a North
somebody just said pearl handle.
Bordello would have.
But he'd have his helmet line up polished, and they said he'd put on those guns and strut up and down the hall. And maybe that's the kind of person you have to have a general, good general.
I don't know. Got me.
But
well, yeah. So you went to Bastogne. You got there like the 10th, give or take, of January 1945.
Yeah. Right.
And then.
Then we worked up and down the fixing sets. So everything was static at that time. They were waiting for the weather to clear so they could push on into Germany.
Okay.
And we were listening to the Russian progress on the radio. We set up something. I got to know an anti-aircraft battery commander. He was a captain. He had been a professor of mathematics in school before he was drafted into the Army. He taught in college.
Mm-hmm.
And he had some ideas about radar sets. And he and I got together, and he said, why can't we pick up something beside airplanes? And I said, well, we probably could. And he said, have you ever tried it? And I said, no. So there was a place just above Kaiserlauten,
right?
Saarlauten, Kaiserlauten, sort of up on a hill.
Right.
And the front was about a mile away, maybe a mile. There was a 90-millimeter tank destroyer 200 yards behind us, firing 90 millimeters. They can go 30,000 yards. It probably within a mile or so of where the line was. He said, let's try something. I said, I'm game. So we took his radar set and set it up on that hill overlooking the valley.
Mm-hmm.
And normally the automatic tracking is done by taking the dipole. You probably not familiar with it, but the transmitter, and setting it off center in the dish so that the signal sent out is off to one side. Then you rotate it like this. So if you see an airplane, it would be stronger over here than over here. We send the signal out in a circle, in a cone. And if we get a stronger signal over here, it tells our equipment it's over there and it moves the antenna. That's the way it tracks.
Okay.
So I stopped the antenna and set it for vertical polarization, and across from us was a road, almost straight, no trees and stuff. And the Germans wouldn't use it in the daytime because it was obvious, and the Corps artillery was set up to put what they call TOTs. Are you familiar with the term?
No, sir.
Time on target.
Oh, okay.
They'd fire the long-range guns, the short-range guns, and all at different times so that everything would arrive at the same time. You see? And they were doing interdictory fire. They'd fire occasionally. But they could see the road, but couldn't see it at night. So at night they would just fire interdictory fire. We aimed that radar set down that road. And the first night, we were getting echoes. And they had to be trucks. And the colonel being a mathematician, captain being a mathematician, we would measure the change in range and the time, and we could see how fast they were going. And we'd get an echo and another echo and another echo and another echo and get echoes going the other way. So we tied in with Corps artillery, and they stopped all interdictory fire. Then we'd wait until some trucks started down that road. He would figure where they were going to be in 10 minutes.
We'll call the fire.
And we'd call a TOT right in on that spot. And we'd do it on a drizzly, raining night. We often wondered what those Germans thought was going on, because they wouldn't use the road until it got dark and raining, and they'd drive down the road, and whoom, everything would come in.
Did you see the results the next day?
No, we never saw the results, although some of it was verified by aircraft, that we had done some good, and they quit this mass movement, and there'd be nothing on the road, they wouldn't fire anything. And pretty soon here would come this target flying down at it, boom, they'd hit it. But it was one of the first times that radar had been used.
Ground surveillance.
Ground surveillance. And it was right interesting. Then we got orders to move out.
During this time, did you have any much in the way of contact with the enemy?
None
them
except
them firing at you, or you firing at them?
No, but that came a little bit later. Because, matter of fact, some shells came in where our radar set was, but landed about 30 yards away. And I was standing there one day talking to one of the fellows. I kept hearing this tank destroyer firing over our heads. You'd hear the sound like this when the shell goes. And I said, how do we tell the difference between outgoing and incoming? He said, they sound different. He said, you'll know the difference. And about that time we heard this like this. And we hit the ground, and as I remember, I think I hit it before he did. They sound different. We heard the screaming mimes some, and some of the howitzer shells. And you know what a long tom is? I don't guess you.
What's that?
That's
75 millimeter cannon?
No, that was about 150 millimeter unit with a great big long barrel. Big gun. It was back right. They set them back from the front.
150 millimeter.
I think it was. It wasn't a howitzer. It was a
cannon.
Full cannon.
Yeah.
Long barrel. One day, I was going somewhere. And there were woods there, and a big field, and a road going in front of the woods. You ever fire a gun when there's the dust in front of it goes up like this when they fire the shell? Sometime when you're seeing it in the movies and they're not up, but seeing some film from the war, if the angle is down a little bit, when they fire it, way out in front of it, all the dust will come up from the shock waves.
Or is it? Okay.
That's the shock wave of firing it. I drove down this road in front of the woods with my driver, and we were just chatting. We were back from the line. And 3 long toms in that wood fired over our heads. And to this day, I believe they saw us coming and said, let's just wait till they get in front of us and fire those guns. Because I went straight up in my seat. I thought the world had ended.
You were
we were that big
shock
cloud of dust was all around us. I could have gone in and killed those guys, but I wanted to get out of there. But I believe they did it deliberately. I still to this day believe they did that deliberately. Anyway, to move on.
So you were repairing radar sets.
Yes.
In and around Bastogne.
Right, and Luxembourg,
right,
and up and down there. I was the only radar maintenance team in that whole area.
Okay.
So they had anti-aircraft batteries here, there, and around, and whatnot. And when something goes wrong, their radar officer would fix it and whatnot. And when he just couldn't do it, they'd call me. Then we moved out. We crossed the Rhine.
And you, about when now? Again, I know the time is
March.
difficult. March of 45, okay.
Yes. We crossed the Rhine. Let me think a minute. Now, I went up to Bingen. Where is... think of when I was in Bingen, which was just above Frankfurt, along the Rhine is a beautiful place. You ever been there? I went up to St. Goarshausen, and they had these big mountains going up out of the side of the Rhine. You know, it's north of Frankfurt, up in that area. It's beautiful. But anyway, we crossed the Rhine just below Frankfurt. They pushed the infantry across, built a pontoon bridge, put an anti-aircraft battalion across, and put me across. Because they didn't want to look at pontoon bridge. So we were right in there with them.
They're concerned about the Luftwaffe still?
Oh, yes.
Coming and taking that bridge out.
And they would, oh, yes. And what we would do, couldn't get over there in the daytime, too many other planes around, but they would try to bomb that bridge at night. Now, when an airplane is flying like this, all we can do is track it. Because we fire the shells, he would be gone somewhere else before the shells got there. So they'd come over at night, we'd track them, follow them around, watch where they were. As soon as they turned and started a run on the bridge, we'd give them 10 to 12 seconds for all the needles to settle down, and then shoot them out of there. Every single time.
It worked, huh?
It worked. I even went over one time and looked at the wreckage of one of the airplanes. Pieces of people all over the place. That's when I began to realize what war was really like.
That was not pleasant then.
No, it was not. And pictures, family pictures of the men that had been in the airplane, you know, and their wives and children and that sort of thing.
Now let me, this kind of fits here. To that point, I'll ask the same question I asked a little bit before. Have you had, up to that point, had you still not had too much personal relationship with civilians?
That's right.
How about with...
with the Germans, we saw a lot of prisoners being...
I was going to say, did you have any personal relationship with prisoners of war, or any dealings with them? Or with, and not with the French or German civilians? You're now in Germany, of course.
Right.
So you're still pretty isolated from the German civilians.
That's right. It was very... I know we went into Trier when we... I'm trying to think, this was this before or after we got to Frankfurt? It might, I don't know whether it was before or after, but we liberated some wine, and but we had no contact with civilians. The towns were just the biggest mess you ever saw, paths through the rubble through a downtown. But they never did get that particular bridge out. In fact, one day we were tracking a ME-109, and it flew over top of our radar set about 100 feet, just like this. And the tracker couldn't keep up with it at that time. They had, each battery had 4 multiple 50 caliber guns. Had 2 of them. And the gunners couldn't seem to tell the difference between a P-51 and a 109. And they never, ever tracked visually properly. I remember one night seeing a German plane flying all around, all these tracers going up after it, and all of them crossing about 50 feet behind the airplane. That little crossing thing would just follow him all the way around. They never...
Your radar's actually tracking the shells.
That radar
as well?
wasn't doing this, you see. These were the smaller things, but the radar set would lead properly. So when that plane was straightened out, we'd just shoot him down. We could fire 12 shells and bring a plane down. It was good. I mean...
How long did you spend guarding that bridge on the
I
line?
don't know. It was a week or 2. In fact, I was there when Roosevelt died. When did he die?
About April 12, something like that. Give or take a little.
Okay, that's where I was. Because I remember and we had an incident. We had our shop truck, and we had some major that resented the fact that we had our own generator, and he would come over at night and come in there and chew us out real good for anything he could think of. Get the lights off. We think we can see something. You better run in this generator, shut it down. So we ungrounded our shop truck, and we probably could have killed him, but I took the metal steps going down to the ground and slipped some wood underneath them, and the car was sitting on tires, and we intentionally ungrounded it and reversed the polarity so that the whole chassis was charged. And we would get into the truck, we'd walk up to the steps, and people didn't notice it, we would hop up onto the first step and go on. We'd walk down and jump off of it. About, it's just one step. Well, it was raining one night, and he walked up to the truck and reached up and grabbed hold of the handle on the back. And we could hear that thing back there just rattling and shaking like this. And finally it stopped, and we never saw him again. Never, ever. But anyway, we moved out of there, went to Nuremberg. We got strafed a few times. I was kind of ignorant the first time. I was driving down the road at night, and I said to my driver, "What's all those little sparkly things down there?" And he said, "Gee whiz, I don't know." And about that time, a Focke-Wulf flew over us, and we realized the sparkly things were the tracers bouncing off the pavement, you see.
Uh-oh.
Then another time, we got strafed in the daylight, and I remember it's a funny feeling when you know somebody's shooting at you trying to kill you. And everybody just scattered, and you want to, it's wide open fields, there's nothing to hide behind, no ditches, you want to throw your helmet on the ground and crawl under it. So we saw a little bit of that. I got close enough to the front lines that I realized that the people that do the work and win the wars are the infantry GIs. They go out and live in those foxholes and they're the ones that really do it. I just got close enough to see some of what they were doing, to get shot at occasionally.
Did you or any of your men ever have occasion to use small arms?
No.
Or to be under attack by small arms?
Well, we were driving one night,
Uh-huh.
and we heard this pat, like this, and got to where we were going, and my driver said he had taken his rear vision mirror on the outside and turned it back, and a bullet had gone through it and through the cab right in front of us. We didn't even know it. Another time we got sniped at a couple of times, strafed a couple of times, so we really didn't get into the nitty-gritty of fighting the war.
I suppose there was a certain fear there all the time, though, wasn't there?
Scared to death.
Scared to death. Okay.
Yes.
I understated it then.
When somebody's shooting at you, yes. You don't get used to it.
But were you, obviously, when you're being shot at acutely, right at that
like
moment.
Getting straight.
Right. That would be, yeah. But
Yeah.
were you kind of fearsome every day? Were you,
No. Oh, no.
On the average day, you weren't
Nah,
particularly
didn't
afraid.
think about it.
Okay. But while it's happening, it's real scary, needless to say.
That's very much of an understatement.
Okay.
Very much of an understatement.
Okay.
One time, some of what you know, Patton used to send out spearheads.
Yes?
I was down one spearhead and I got a call to go fix a radar set over here, certain location.
All right.
Now, I wasn't really too aware of this spearhead business, so it was about 10, 12 miles over there. So I got my driver, got in a truck, and we drove through some woods and got over there to where the set was and worked on it. And in driving over through the woods, I had commented to the driver, I said, gosh, it's peaceful in here. There's no sign of anything. And we drove on through, got ready to fix it and whatnot, and said, well, let's go back through the woods. And one of the sergeants there where we were working said, you're not talking about those woods? And I said, yeah, that's the shortest way. He said, there's a battalion of SS troopers in there that were bypassed by Patton in the Pinchers.
Right.
And I had driven right through the middle of the woods. I bet I had guns trained on me all the way through there. I had to go back 20 miles and come back out the other spearhead, see?
Why do you suppose they didn't fire on you?
I don't know to this day.
Just thought they don't, I don't know.
You don't know.
Want to give away their position?
Maybe they didn't want to give
Exact
away their position or something like that.
Huh. That'd be pretty scary in retrospect.
In retrospect, that was scary.
Terrifying.
Yes. So I had to go back 20 miles and turn and come back out the other spearhead.
Just let me add, this is kind of a digression here, but
Yeah.
You say you went from here to there to there to there to there, and what did you have in general? Did you have good maps? Did you know? And you did you pretty much do the map work yourself personally, or did you have somebody else who did it? And was it
Usually, I was nearly always attached to a battalion or a battery of anti-aircraft. If I got orders to go to some other place within the group, they'd say, we got a set over so-and-so, and I'd say, all right, tell me where it is and how to get there. And somebody else would say, here's the map, here are the roads.
Did they give you a map? You know, had
I
your
didn't
own map?
carry maps with me. I don't remember carrying maps.
You just kind of got directions?
Yes.
Like I got directions to your house this
Yes,
morning?
yes. I don't think they wanted too many maps floating around.
Why is that, I wonder?
Well, because if I had a map of where that thing was and put an X where I was going and got captured, they'd say that would give away the information
for
where everything
intelligence,
is.
operational
Yeah,
security.
I think it was
purposes.
operational security.
Okay.
Then we went on into Nuremberg, and that place was a mess. It was just stuffed down all over the place.
This is when now?
This is in late April.
Okay. Wait a minute. You were there. Where did you say you were when Roosevelt died?
I was just across the Rhine.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so by late April, then you're in Nuremberg.
Yes.
Okay.
Then moved on down to right near Fürstenfeldbruck on the Danube. We crossed the Danube.
Okay.
Because we were on a hillside, and there was the Danube. And I remember on May the 8th, 109 came by with a Mustang right behind it. and was diving for the river, and the 109 just throttled back, put down his flaps and lifted up, and the Mustang went right under him. But I can remember seeing the bullets all churning up the water. And the German didn't shoot at him. The Germans just trying to get away from him because that was the day the war ended, you see, May 8th.
Oh.
So the 109...
He wanted to die on the last day. I don't know.
Yeah, and so he wasn't going to shoot at the Mustang. So then 109 turned and flew right horizontal with us, and our machine guns, not the 90s, machine guns were shooting at him, and there was some on the other side shooting at him too. So bullets started popping around us. So we realized what it was. But the 109 landed in a cow pasture. And I went up there and took the artificial horizon out of the airplane and brought it back with me. And it was an electric one, and I gave it to Elmer Wood. I don't know where it ever ended up.
This is May 8th.
May 8th, that's when the war ended.
You were in Nuremberg.
No,
First in Fellbrook.
Yeah, not there, but out in the fields. But we could see the Alps in the distance with snow on them. And somebody said they were the Bavarian Alps. Is that Alps?
Oh, yeah.
Is that what that would be?
That's Bavaria, all right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure enough. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting.
And that's when the war ended.
Okay. And then?
Then I was attached to the 45th Infantry Division. They are the people that landed at Salerno, and
yes.
They said, man, some of the people that were left from that said that was real fighting down there, that they would lose 70 and 80% of a unit. I was sent to a camp 20 miles outside of Paris to await transportation to the United States.
Okay, so you went from First and Fellbrook to
the camp.
That's in May.
Mm-hmm.
And you very shortly were immediately were assigned as 45th Infantry Division.
That's right.
And they were coming from Italy?
No, I don't know what they were. They had come up from Italy months before.
Oh, they were in Germany.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you went to the 45th Infantry. You met them where? Where were they geographically?
I believe that they were at this camp outside of Paris that I was. No, I was attached to them right after the war ended, near First and Fellbrook. I think they were just based there.
Okay, and then you went with them to Paris.
I don't know whether I was with them or just with a motley group that they were doing everything to get everybody out of there.
Okay. Let's see. Let me. Who issued you the orders to go with him? What was the name? What was the group that you?
38th Anti-Aircraft Brigade.
Okay, and that was part of the Third Army.
Yeah.
And that was an independent brigade, was it?
Yeah. Under the Third Army.
It wasn't part of the division, any division. It was an independent brigade.
I don't believe it was. I think
Army.
it was an independent brigade. Didn't they have independent brigades?
I really don't know. They do today.
But you see, it was strictly anti-aircraft.
Okay.
That's all they did.
Anyhow, they issued you orders to join the 45th and go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I was relieved from their command, maybe, and sent to this holding camp outside of Paris.
Relieved from the 45th.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and I went to this holding camp near Paris and
stayed there for a month with absolutely nothing to do.
Were you
And
allowed
that's how I learned how hard it is to do nothing.
Were you allowed to move around, or were you?
I went into Paris twice.
Okay.
Which was interesting. That's some place.
Oh yeah, Paris is special, isn't it?
Oh man.
No, a special city. It really
Oh
is.
yeah, just walking up and down the Champs-Élysées.
Champs-Élysées.
Yeah, and through the Arc. I went through the Arc.
Oh yeah.
Stopped and had my picture taken with a 3D camera along there one time, and went to the Casino du Paris, and rode the subway, sitting there in the seat, and all these people just chatting away, and I couldn't understand a word they said. We were waiting to go to the United States, 30 days leave in the United States, and then the Pacific. I was at the Plaza de la Concord.
Mm-hmm.
Came down out of the hotel.
You talking about in Paris, the Place de la
Paris.
Concorde, okay.
Right. Walked out the steps, and somebody held up a Stars and Stripes and said, "Atomic bomb dropped on Japan."
Wow, that's kind of dramatic. You're at the Place de la Concorde in Paris when you get
Yes.
the news in the Stars and Stripes that they just dropped the atomic
Yep.
bomb in Japan, okay?
Right.
Hey, let me ask you, at that time, did that signal anything to you? Well, first of all, you probably didn't even know what an atomic bomb was, did you? It's just
The minute I saw it, I knew what it was. I knew about atomic energy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I knew that if you could release the energy in a pound of coal, you could probably drive a ship across the ocean if you could get all of it. So
Right.
when they said atomic bomb, it just all went together. Not what they actually did,
Okay.
but the concept of a nuclear
Okay.
explosion.
Did you say, oh, well, that's the end of that war, or how did you react to that?
Hallelujah.
Did you think that would probably end the war?
I figured that was the beginning of the end of it.
Okay.
Hallelujah. And the hallelujah was because I didn't want to go to the Pacific because of a lot of the stories of the Japanese, you know, how they were, the atrocities they committed
Yes.
and the things they did and how sadistic they were. I didn't want to